I have a deconversion story that's going to sound quite a bit different than most people's. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. I don't typically do the deconversion thing because I did not invest considerable amounts of life into Christianity. However, I was raised in a Christian home. From my earliest recollection, I can remember we went to church multiple times a week. I don't remember being in, the nursery or really at young ages, but I can remember by, third, fourth, fifth grade being in Sunday school and learning about the ark and the animals and all that kind of stuff. So, definitely church was a part of it. So, deconversion. Why, what, where, how? All right. I got a story that's a little bit different, but before I get into it, I want to warn you, my channel isn't monetized, so I'm allowed to say things like suicide and abuse and belt whippings and things like that, which is this story is going to contain in it. So if it's going to be something that you don't like to hear, please go now, because those are parts of the story. Okay, I'm going to try to nutshell this and still make it bigger and more detailed than previously, because there's so much that goes into it. But it's like, what's the deconversion? Let's just stick to that. Okay, so as I'm a kid and growing up, my brother and I, Larry, were from my mom's first marriage. We had been abused already. My biological father had been burning us with cigarettes in order to, he was a drunk and didn't hold down the job apparently. And my mom was a waitress and would work and get tip money. And he would come home every once in a while. She said he would be gone for like 3 days at a time, come home, get money, beat her, and then leave again. And that when she stopped giving him money, that's when he started burning us. And she was like, okay, yeah, all that stuff was going on prior to my development where I was conscious enough to remember things. That was happening in my infancy. Okay, so but it did have an effect on me. I found that out later as I'm trying to heal and figure out why I'm such a basket case. What wired me? I have to undo all this stuff. Okay, so I remember I'm just going to skip ahead to the point where Larry and I are older. We're in a home. My mom is remarried, but she's got demons. She was raised in a way that she never got things resolved. So what I remember early on, and I'm just going to spell out that there were things there were good and bad things that happened. But what you remember are the things like this. You kids are so stupid. You're so damn dumb. You're never going to amount to anything. I can remember that it was like very important in the home. Whenever mom talked to you or dad, you had to say yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir. If they called you, you could not say what. You had to say ma'am, Danny, ma'am. If I said what, that's a beating. There's something wrong here, okay? She would lose it and she would grab a belt and begin wailing. And I don't know how to describe that. If you've ever been hit with belts, you know what that is. If you haven't, I don't know how to describe it. Take a belt or, a lash or something and slap yourself hard enough to welt yourself on the inside of the thigh. It will hurt. Now imagine that it's a little child, a belt is going and the welts are appearing. Thighs, front, back, butt, back, wrapping around, chest. You get racked. The belt is just flailing and flailing as somebody has lost control and you're pulling away, screaming, yelling, freaking out. There's nothing you can do. You're just getting wailed upon until the person's demon had played out. We didn't know that then. We're little kids going, I don't know what I did. What am I doing? It's time for bed. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Jesus, please come help us. We're getting beat. I love you. I don't want to live like this. Nothing ever happened. The beatings like that happened about, I would say 1 to 4 times a month. Sometimes weekly. It just depended on how bad, on what the triggering was and where we were at life. It ends up there's a number of boys. They had more kids, and we're rambunctious and kids playing outside and arguing and yelling and hitting each other. But the issue is what happens then is somebody would lose it and just blow up. It was like, I've had it with you kids, and they would just that was how it was managed. And but also looking back on it, I'm just going to tell you, it was not somebody correcting a child saying, here, I'm going to I need to get your attention. It was somebody that had, if you can imagine the times in your life where you lost it and you were not going to, it was playing out of you and it was not going to end until it was done. That's what was happening here. Okay. We're on the receiving end of someone's mind doing that, only instead of putting holes in the drywall, they're putting welts on the kids. Yeah, that's it. Connect the dots. We're all doing the same things out here. So one day, it's a Sunday, a fall day, November. Cool. We come home from church. Dad was at work. Mom was driving. We're in the back seat of the car. Larry was talking to me, and I just remember him saying a few things to me that day because he was talking about heaven. He was a grade above me in Sunday school. He said in Mr. Woodard's class, they talked about heaven all day, and he was like, you know what? It's great. We don't have to eat liver. We always had to eat liver. We didn't like it. We can see Blackie. Blackie was our cat that got in the engine compartment on a cold day. So I remember those things because they were kind of recent things. And he said, we'll never get beat. I remember him saying those things. Now that day, when we got home, I had to stay after lunch. I had to stay in the house and help my brother, Steve, the ABC routine. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Yeah, try to get him to memorize his ABCs. But I look out the window and I see Larry out there. He's throwing up this orange water can. We had some ducks, and we had their eggs, and they ate the slugs. So he was watering the ducks and giving them food. He looked happy. About a half an hour later, I finished. It's another story, but I leave to go find him. Something is compelling me. I don't feel okay. I know I'm going to get a whipping, but I got to go find Larry. I go up and I find him, and I see him in the woods. At first, when I first spot him, he's like, I can see him from about the back of his thighs, the back of his calves up. And there's a rope there, and he's just ramrod straight, but I don't see his feet. And I'm standing there at first going, Larry, don't play around like this. Don't do that. I couldn't see his feet. I thought he was just like, I walk down the rise, I come up, and as I come up slowly, it comes into view to the point that his feet aren't on the ground. So I panic, I reach up, I hug around his legs, and I'm trying to lift him, but he just falls over, and I'm trying to fumble at the knot. I can remember crying, and Larry. I couldn't do the knot. I had to run home then. I grabbed a butcher knife, ran back out. My brother Steve was back at the table by then. He saw me do that. I grabbed the butcher knife and ran outside. I went up and I cut the rope. Larry just slumped into the ground. I tried to get it from around his neck. It wouldn't come. I had to put the knife between the rope and his neck to cut it loose. That's important for later. There's pictures that had to be painted here. People thought it was an accident, that he was just making a slip knot to play on or something, and it slipped around his neck. It wasn't a slip knot. It was tied tight. In church, we were in a scouting group called the Royal Rangers. I don't know if it exists anymore. At that point in time, it was like a Boy Scout oriented, or church oriented Boy Scouts. Yeah, we wanted to do that. You come to church Wednesday night, whether you like it or not. You can go to Royal Rangers, or you can sit upstairs and listen to the preacher. Yeah, we're going to go downstairs with the boys and learn how to make fires with a match and, learn verses and that kind of stuff. So we went and we did that. But in there, I learned first aid. There was some first aid stuff we did, but there was one none of us ever did, but it was the mouth to mouth. It was just pictures in the book, and we talked about it, but never did it. And it was at that moment I thought, oh, okay, I got to do this. Larry's not breathing. So I tried to give him mouth to mouth. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know he had a crushed trachea. I didn't open an airway. I couldn't get air into him. I finally just took a deep breath and forced as hard as I could. And there's this deep rumbling, and I think, okay, do it. I force as much as I can, and I pull up, and I just forced air into his stomach and caused him to regurgitate. It was at that moment I run home. I didn't want to get Mom, but it's time to get Mom. She's coming out in the backyard. She's walking out in the yard. Your brother said you came in and grabbed the butcher knife and ran out the backyard. I'm yelling at her as I'm coming into the woods. Larry, I just found him hanging. She gets what's going on, and she drops everything, and she's like, oh, she realizes the importance of it, and she yells at me to go get the neighbor man. Well, I show her where he is first, and she's go get Mr. I don't want to say his name. He's gone now too, but the family's still there. Go get him. So I ran and get him. He came back. He picked up Larry off the cold ground, brought him into the house. My mom had called the fire department. There's no 911 and that kind of stuff at that time. They're coming out. They get the address. They tell me to go out and stand out by the telephone pole to flag down the ambulance when it comes by so they know where to go. We're in a rural place. It's, it's, yeah, before modern times. So it was a little bit different back then. So they came in. I can remember them. I remember them it's an Ambu bag. I remember them had the bag on his face and I could see in the house. I tried to come in. They made me go outside and I ended up just sitting up against the side of the house, just listening. Mom had called a bunch of ladies from the church. They came over. You can hear them all in there speaking in tongues, that kind of stuff. And it was just I couldn't figure it out. I'm about 6 weeks away from turning 10 years old. I still have some rough spots, don't I? I got to talk through this stuff until it doesn't hurt anymore. Okay, the story, though, I can't stop it right now. I'll just take breaks if I need to recompose. All right, so they took him in the ambulance, and I was like, oh, finally, he's going to be in the hospital. Nobody's talking to me. I see that they're working on him. They got the Ambu bag. They cart him off. He's down the road. Yay. Dad comes home from work, gets Mom. They go to the hospital. I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. And my relatives or somebody's over there watching us. And later that night, Mom and Dad come back home alone. And I'm told to go to bed. And the next day, I have a fitful sleep. I don't remember it very much. But I remember the next day, I had to get up and go to school. Nobody told me Larry died. Nobody told me anything. That there's 3 younger boys at home, and one of them was an infant, and they had their hands full, and they had to make funeral arrangements. So they thought the best thing to do would just send Danny to school. He'd be all right. So I go there, and I'm completely unfunctional. This was a strange thing, because I was not a teacher's pet or a popular, fit that category of kind of the quiet, goofy kid. But the teacher called me right up front. Danny, come up here. I need you to take this to the office. She had an envelope for me. And right off the bat, I'm like, oh, that's weird, because I didn't care. It's like, okay. But that was never something that happened. I look back on it. They've had this figured out. They had this set up. They were probably like, what the hell is this kid doing in school? So I take the note to the office, and right away, I see what's going on. And I never thought about it then, but now, I'm an old man. They're long gone. I want to thank you ladies for doing this. So I get to, as soon as the secretary or whoever is in the office sees me approaching, they just come right around. They grab me and they direct me over to the nurse's office. The nurse brings me in to the back room where if somebody's sick or not feeling good, there's a little quiet place with a cot back there. She put me in there and turned off the light, said, you just lay down and relax. Here's the blanket. You know what? Normally I like to skip over these parts and not get too detailed about it because of the very reason you're seeing, although this is actually a good lesson on how the healing works, that these things are put away. And when you emerge them, you see what the nature of them are by how they make you feel. You see me emotional about this stuff? That's because that's how they're still stored that way. That means I need to work on this stuff. It doesn't mean that it's okay or anything like that. I have to try to understand something different. It's up to me whether or not I'm going to be a victim or not. And I want everybody to know that today that I am not that person. I'm not that Danny Paulson. So if this is kind of a tear-jerking thing, that's all right. It was that morning on the way to school, or at school, as we got to school. The buses are there. Kids were getting into class where a student said to me, hey, Paulson, I heard your dad killed your brother. That was the first time I had any confirmation that he was dead. Like everybody knew but me. This picture is from a fall day. I'm not sure exactly when, but it was about a month to a month and a half before Larry took his life. Look at him. What would make a little kid like that hang himself? Yeah, well, okay, so what happens? Jesus never comes, but Larry says, I got another way to get to heaven. All I have to do is die. We don't have to wait for Jesus to come and help us. We can go there. So Larry hangs himself thinking he's going to appear in heaven. And he leaves me behind, and nobody talks to me. And there's a reprieve for a while. The beatings quit. Nobody ever talks to me. So the story unwinds. It's deep. It's all inside the head of a little kid, isn't it? It's all my world, my experience. It is what is emerging. It's what I'm trying to figure out. It's what I'm not knowing. It is what I'm afraid of. It's knowing that I can't go talk to I don't have a source to go talk to and ask for help. And nobody approaches me for anything. So it's just, you're expected just figure it out. Nobody does. 3-4 months go by. There's a reprieve in the beatings, but gradually things return to normal. Only now, you're alone. You don't have somebody to talk to. I felt very betrayed in many ways at that point. And I want you to know that at this point in time, I still believed in God and Jesus at that time in life. I was 10 years old, a few weeks after his funeral. And it's a young age. So at the age of 10 years old, I'm convinced that God and Jesus exist, but that I hate them and that I don't ever want to be with them and that I would go to hell. That I was also made aware that people that commit suicide go to hell, that they don't go to heaven, that they think they do. You're not supposed to commit suicide. So I thought, well, Larry's in hell then. He made a mistake. He was lied to. And if that's what you're going to do, I think I got this backwards. I've seen something here that is not right with what people are telling me. I see it backwards. I don't like you, God, and I don't like you, Jesus. And I want to go where Larry is. That's how I felt. And in the absence of outside, and it's good I didn't get outside because it would have been bullshit. I needed to figure out things on my own. I did. This was actually a very important time in my life. Looking back on it, in the scheme of things, it was very pivotal. You good with metaphor? It was my engine. I needed drive. This was going to become drive. I didn't know it then, but it was going to become drive. Okay, so life goes on, and I'm still believing in God and Jesus, but I believe God and Jesus is not good. I'm thinking about 14 years old, where I got my last belt whipping with my mom. You ever seen those big blackberry bushes, the Himalayan ones that are really, they're not the little ones. They have the big, huge, sweet berries. You don't make pies out of them. They're not tart or anything. They're just gooey candy kind of eating things. But their vines are big, and they're like rose vines. It would be like something, maybe rose would be a better choice. Everybody knows what those are. Whippings are like if you were getting hit with rose branches. It smacks it, but although it stings like little tiny ice picks all over. And every time you get whapped, it's like that. It's not like one pick. It's just a series of, it's one big whap. But within about, I would say, half a minute to a minute, 2 minutes, that pain subsides. And it gets replaced by heat. It gets really hot. The welts feel like burns, like sunburns. Like if somebody took a torch, not if they held you and burned it, but if they just, and then another spot, each one of those becomes a burn that's like, oh, that's painful, that hurts. They get red, they swell. Pretty soon you are hot. You feel hot. So I'm about 14 and I don't know what I did, but that beating was there. And what I remember, this is where I really decided God didn't exist. I went outside after the beating. It was raining. It was in Washington. It rained a lot near Seattle. And I think I slipped on my rubber boots. I think I was barefooted in the house. I had T-shirt and jeans on. Sometimes I think I'm barefooted. Sometimes I think I slipped on my rubber boots. That doesn't matter. What I remember is I was out in back of the garage, out near the woods, the wood line. And I stood there just looking up, and the cold rain was just cooling my body. I could feel it running down the heat, and I was so hot. But that rain felt so good. And I just remember going, I'm going to encrypt it here. What I did is I put my hands up in the sky towards God and said, kill me. I don't want my life. What am I here for? Did you just create me so that I could go through this hell? Up yours. I would rather die. Kill me. Take me now. And nothing happened. It was just quiet. I stood there, lower your arms. Stood there long enough until I went, I'm getting cold. I have to go back in. That was the time I decided God didn't exist. Mom never beat me with a belt again. She started getting, she wasn't big enough anymore. I was starting to fight back. I've had it. It took something else. Someone else had to step in. I want to make sure to say something now, that in the home, there really is turmoil, okay? I am acting out. I am not going to school. I am getting bad grades. I'm out of control. I'm like, I don't care anymore. But you see what's happened. So Mom is clamping tighter. I'm fighting back harder. There's just something really wrong here. So I don't want to try to paint the picture that I'm sitting there quietly and someone's just coming after me. No, this is turning into something big. It is. The day that I left home, I'm packing up my backpack, told Mom I'm done. It was very matter of fact. She's screaming and yelling and banging on me, and I'm like, I'm done. That's it. I'm out of here. She realized something had snapped in me. I'm packing up my backpack. I have nowhere to go. I have not had a job. I don't have a car. I got nothing. I'm going to pack my backpack and start walking down the road to my next life. I don't care what it is. She calls the neighbor man, the same man that picked up Larry off the ground that day, to come and talk to me. He's lost it. Please come and stop him. Dad was at work. He comes in, he stands in the door. And I remember looking at him kind of like cringing, like, please don't get in my way. I didn't know what to do. And he said, I've been waiting for this to happen. I've been listening to you kids screaming and yelling and getting beat through the woods for years. Been waiting for this. You got any place to go? Got any money? He gave me a $20 bill and drove me out of there. So I moved on to the next phase of my life, which goes into something different then. What happens? Well, you got no visible means of support. You live out of a backpack. So you go to Seattle where you know how to panhandle, or where you've seen people panhandle, and you figure it's going to be an easy thing. So you do that, and you learn how to hunt and forage, which garbage cans have the best food. And it doesn't take long before people say, you are a kid. You do not belong on the street. You're going to die. Let's take you in. And they do. And they clean you up, and they molest you. And you leave there, and you don't know what to do. And life goes on, and eventually you find ways of getting out of it. But the story gets too big. It's too big. It's too big. This is about the conversion and not about me, or the deconversion. But I want to say in the end, there's something that has to be understood, that I am not that 10-year-old boy anymore. That was a facet of my life that had to be resolved. Understanding the stories is something I cannot stress enough how much they have been important to me and understanding them, but it's so darn hard to show anybody. I don't know what to do here with the story. It changed my life, knowing things that I had to go and resolve, but it took a long time, and it was a hurtful life to get to a point where you start out in a bad place to get to a good place. You don't just appear there. You have to work through a lot to get there, and there's going to be ups and downs. And I look at my mom, and I realize now at some point in time, through cause and effect, and from talking to her, as she's older and she's a grandmother at some point, and you've got kids and you're talking to her and saying, Mom, I need to understand some things. I remember something unusual. She put her head on my shoulder. She's about that tall. Put her head on my shoulder and just hugged me and just wouldn't let go. And she just bawled till I could feel warm tears down my shirt. And she was saying, I'm so sorry for what I did. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. I am so sorry. I don't know what happened. And she had to live with the loss of her son. And what happens is she's a little kid at some point in time being told, you're damn dumb. You're stupid. You're never going to amount to anything. She's being whipped. She's being beat. She's also being molested. And she's being told, you don't ever tell anybody. And she gathers the demons of her family, and she lives life, and without finding a way to resolve the demons, she passes them on to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. And you step outside and you realize that, and you go, oh, I appear in here with an opportunity to exist and to rise above. You cannot rise above if you do not exist. You are where you are. What are you going to do? How do you want to live? If I hadn't made changes in my life, I doubt I would be alive today. And if I was, I'd probably be in jail. I would not be living the life that I'm living. I had to understand that my mom was a victim that never got out of it, and that I was a person that was just next in the line, and that if I could forgive her and let go of that, that's me letting go of the family demons that others cannot get rid of. That became very incumbent upon me, which means, Mom, I love you for everything you did. Now, there's something here I think that is very important to say. I never say this, but I think that it needs to be said. You know what? It is emotionally difficult to face things. You're not going to find comfort doing it, but you're the person that realizes you will find comfort after doing it. So you're going to go ahead and do that anyway. As I'm going along here, it's important for me to stress that whatever I'm saying and things like that, these things that sound like these emotionally, wouldn't that just drag you down to the depths of despair? And yeah, it did. It did. But it doesn't anymore. That's why not many people will do it. The people that do it are the ones that are going to say, you know what? This thing is continually causing me problems. I'm going to stop and deal with it because I want my future to be better. And there's not many, that takes stopping and dealing with something that is very uncomfortable. It takes a certain something different upstairs. So there's a point where people wonder why I work with the Bible. And, with what happened with your brother, how can you do that? And there's something that I've learned to understand, is the compartmentalization of what is true and what is not. And understanding that the Bible has two layers to it. An outward-looking one and an inward-looking one. Larry's gone because of the outward-looking one. If he found the inward-looking one, he would not be. However, if he was not gone, I would not have looked for the inward-looking one, because I went looking for Larry. I would not have found it. So this is kind of here he is right up here. You know what? Larry and I are both doing this together. He's just up here. Does that sound goofy? It's a thought process. It drives me. It's still part of the engine. I want to know what's going on. You look for Larry, you find something. Okay, so my deconversion story has an ending. It's not just a deconversion and goes, this stuff is not true. I've believed it once and now I don't. That's a deconversion from Christianity. However, I didn't have to do that. I deconverted from what? You know what? I don't know. My belief was strong, but only as a child. But it was not working. We were not having success. There was a point where I didn't have the real heartfelt joy that many people have through Christianity. My heartfelt feelings about Christianity did not include joy. They did not. It was not a fun thing for me. And you know what? I've stripped off the clothes to stand naked. Metaphor, if you know what that means. The pain, the shame, the hurt. There's still some stuff there, but it's not the kind of stuff that, if I blubber over the kindness that people showed me as a little kid, if that's something that I store inside of me, I don't think that's going to act out and become a problem for me in life. So I don't know if I have to resolve something like that. It's an emotional part of you that, if it causes problems, you do want to resolve it. It's a memory that is stored in the way that when you bring it up, how does it make you feel? Talk to somebody about it. If it does that, that's how it makes you feel. You keep talking about it. Phew, let's do it again. Okay. I had to go to school the day after my brother died. I cut him out of the tree. Nobody told me he died. I got told the next morning by another student they didn't say he was dead, but I got the insinuation. I heard your father killed your brother. That was the first time I heard that he was dead. Other people knew I didn't. The teacher thought, this poor kid doesn't belong here. We'll get him out of here. They set it up ahead of time. They had it planned. They called me right up front. The teacher called me up, sent me to the office. The office lady's like, there he is. Get him to the nurse's office. Boom. Get him over there and let him cry. Okay, so it's still, but it's better. Use the higher awareness. Yeah, you know what's happening here. The ladies saw what was going on. That little boy down there, that's not me. That's that little boy of one time. This is a facet of me along the path of life. I was that person once. I don't have to be that person now. I can go acknowledge that little boy and say, here's what happened. Because that little boy didn't get acknowledged. That's it right there. Now you go back and you pretend you're yourself and you find your old self in your mind. Close your eyes to do it. Pretend you're finding yourself who's crying and sitting there confused, and you say to yourself, hey, you know what? This is going to work out for you. You don't understand it now, but here's what happened. Here's what's going to happen. And then that earlier memory dissipates. It goes away, or it doesn't go away. It just doesn't hurt anymore. It goes, oh, okay. Okay, I understand. I'm okay then. Let's just happily live together. It kind of works like that. So, all right. Deconversion? Yeah. How does that look? You use the Bible? You're not an atheist or a theist? How does that work? I fully understand that what I have going on is unusual. It's a bit different. I can tell you that when I make decisions and I look at the Bible and I interpret things, that I have emotional interest and I have logic interests, truth interests. And I always make sure that I go for the truth over the emotions. I put the truth over my feelings. And you can see from my past why it's necessary for me to do that. I really didn't have any choice from childhood to seek something I couldn't find something that was going to make me feel okay. I had to do something different. But I also accidentally had the right brain. My heart goes out to the people that can't escape these situations, that can't figure it out, or that didn't have teachers along the way that looked out for them. They just said, yeah, shut up, kid. Yeah, what a rotten kid. Look at how inattentive he is. Yeah, I could have been handled in different ways at times that could have set me the wrong direction. At times along the way, I kept getting the nudges and the hits, the something somehow. I look back on it and go, boy, something was guiding me. Was it because my mom, in her despair over her husband abusing her while she was pregnant with me, got permission to name me Daniel Luke instead of Larry, who was named after our father, Lawrence Francis Howe? Is there something set in there? Did she set something in her mind that put me on this course? In which case, that's fine. I love that. We just had to get through the family demons. You know, there's this bizarre thing that Jesus says that people can't figure out, that is, like, as he's teaching, he's got a group of people that are listening to him, but there's a knock at the door and it's his family, mother and some family members, and they're telling him, hey, your family's here. And the teaching point there is that is not my family. My family are the ones in here doing the work. That is what this means. We leave our roots. We leave the beginnings that are unaware and move to someplace that is aware. This is exactly in the material. If I understand that properly, I can interact with this. If I have some emotional, headstrong, I hate this for some other reason, I don't find the truth. If I believe the supernatural carrier story without interpreting it, then I am the one carrying the ark. So what you have here is the act of, if you interpret the metaphor, we're opening the ark. If the story is the ark, then opening it up is understanding it, isn't it? If it's something physical, you got to find that. All right, so it's up to you how you treat the verse. If I treat it as something that needs to be understood, then it becomes something interactive that's meaningful to me, for me to change my life from what it was to what it is today. I don't need anybody to tell me a damn thing. No, I don't mean to say it that way, but when people approach and say, you did it wrong, or your favorite, yeah, you know what? I can see as a kid where you messed up, you didn't believe right, you didn't have it together, something like that. You weren't guided properly. You know what I wish? I wish there was the capacity to have two livable planets, and that everybody that thinks that way lives together, coexists somewhere else. The people that not only, they carry the Bible, and they're told that if you've been asked to walk a mile in somebody's footsteps, then go 2. You're supposed to understand. You're supposed to get out of... these guys aren't even getting out of their own house. They don't understand what you're going through. They don't understand your experience. And they don't want theirs to be wrong. So instead of being able to encompass a globe of variation, all they can do is live personally through their own and wonder why you can't get there. Okay. We're kind of screwed. People like that, you know what? I bawled my eyes out. I'll encrypt it to you too. Figure it out. All right. I hope this wasn't offensive to anybody. I am really solid, realistic with what this is. I am at times hurt over the memories of my past. At times incredibly joyous over my opportunities and the things that I've learned and what I'm still working on today. But I think it was important in this case to go ahead and draw out a little bit more detail than I have in the past. I don't want to make, oh, woe is me stories. I don't like that idea at all. I don't want people, fawning all over you or doing stuff like that or saying, let me help you. Oh, you poor thing. Yeah, I don't like that. Yeah, don't help me. I don't know what to say. I know your intentions are true, and your heart is true, and your meaning is true. But you need to understand, I know where you're coming from, but you don't know where I'm coming from. Okay? Figure that out first. Walk that second mile. Then talk to me. Get out of your house. All right, everybody, hope the video was fun and interesting and educational. Ask any questions, comments. No blubbering, please. I'm good. That's what healing's about. Looking back on your life and saying, this is my opportunity. When do I get my field back, my life experience? When I can strip off my garments and elevate myself by standing on top of them. Yeah. My past is a wonderful thing. Why? Because it gave me the opportunity to grow. It gave me the opportunity to be here, and I exercised that opportunity. I exercised it. But it was a lifelong adventure. They lived in times of old, not like we do today. They did not see as much as we do. When they're disconnecting us to the world, what are they doing? They don't have to turn off media. They didn't know what was going on all around the world. They didn't see everything we see. We have too much going on. We really need to simplify, and that doesn't happen. And people look for fast fixes when really it's a lifestyle. If you clear yourself out and live a certain way, everything just flows naturally. We're looking for a flow in the Tao. It's almost better to just learn this over in Taoism than it is in any other religion. We're flowing in a natural something here. We come from and we return to. There's this higher awareness that talks to us. Do we see that? No, we don't. That's where we need to be. That's what I work on. And that's what the template gets us to. Even the template that frames all things Abrahamic. The outer shell of Abraham looks outward. However, it's built on the same template that everything else that looks inward it functions on. Okay. Again, hope the video was fun and interesting. Comments, questions, feel free to put them below. See you in the next video.